Good morning, agents, and welcome to another daily episode of Target Loot today for Saturday, December 5th. In this series, we cover a lot from the Target Loot map, DZ exclusives you can farm for, highlights from the weekly vendor resets, build and farming suggestions, and much more. This is Shadow Gaming, and if you enjoy this video, consider pressing the subscribe and like buttons below, and remember to comment below if you have any questions. Otherwise, let's get this video started. Alright guys, so starting off with the Dark Zones as always, but of course the vendor reset highlights will always be in the bottom left overlay. Really, the big mentions really this week is the theater. So at the theater, I believe there is the Surge with Perfect Spike that you can pick up. That's pretty decent. And then of course over here at the campus, you also have the Forge, you know, with that 50% extra shield health to your shield. That's might be worth farming for. Otherwise, in DZ West, we have Hana U today that's targeted loot. And while the Force Multiplier backpack with Perfect Combined Arms is a great backpack, I do not recommend going to farm for it in the Dark Zone since the loot quality is so low. So really, you just kind of want to wait until maybe tomorrow when Hana U rotates out of the Dark Zones. Next up, we got DZ South with Shotgun. So of course, the Dark Zone exclusive you can farm for here is the Rock and Roll Shotgun with Perfectly Extra. And what I really like to do with this shotgun is run it on my 4-piece True Patriot build with the Memento Backpack and the Sokolov Chest with Intimidate. It shreds through content, it gives you 36 rounds out of that drum magazine and the shotgun. And while it doesn't hit as hard as the Mop with that 10% armor on kill, it does fire quite fast and like I said has a really large drum magazine, so I think it's worth it. And then of course next up in DZ East we got holsters as targeted loot, and really the only holster that's a Dark Zone exclusive is the Claws Out holster. It's a Wyvernware one. And it comes with 500% melee damage and 10% pistol damage, so that's worth it for any shield build user for sure. Alright guys, now let's check out what we got on the north side. Alright agents, now we're over here on the north side, targeted loot highlights, and the invaded missions this week, of course as always, is Camp White Oak, and then Bank HQ, DCD headquarters, and then Roosevelt Island, and Tidal Basin Stronghold. Now for the regular targeted loot, we do have assault rifles at Camp White Oak, so remember, you got the exotic chameleon with adaptive instincts that you can farm for today. Now that one's really good, and like I said with my True Patriot build, you just swap out that Sokolov chest piece for a Fenris one for the 10% assault rifle damage, and then use the chameleon instead of an SMG. Otherwise, there's named ARs that are worth farming for, the Mechanical Animal with Future Perfection for getting your skill builds into overcharts quite often. And then of course the Burnout named FAMAS is really good on a Focus and Vigilance build. And then I believe the Maniac, the named Military AKM, might be a Dark Zone exclusive, but it does have Perfectly Overflowing, and it's pretty good, but I don't really ever use it often. And remember, the best assault rifles you could farm for would be the FAMAS, the Military AKM, the Police M4, and the Carbine 7. Next up, we got Strikers at Coney Island Ballpark. So like I always tell you guys, 3 pieces for that increased weapon handling, rate of fire. That's really all it's good for, in my opinion. The damage that you get from the 4 pieces isn't worth it, especially over an all high-end build that deals a lot more damage. So this is really just useful, in my opinion, for the Merciless or maybe like an LMG, so you can increase the rate of fire. Next up, we got Douglas and Harney at Coney Island Amusement Park. You can farm today right here for the Punch Drunk Mask. It gives you an extra 20% headshot damage baked right into it. It goes great on an all high-end headshot damage build. Last up, we got LMGs at Manning National Zoo. Today you can farm the exotics, so that's Bullet King and Pestilence. Both of those drop outside of the Dark Zone, and of course the Pestilence is highly worth farming for. While the Bullet King has a lower base damage, it never needs to be reloaded, so that's a pretty good, weapon for some builds. And then of course there's multiple named LMGs you can get. I personally prefer the Carnage with Perfect Sadist on an ongoing directed bleed build, and then the new Reliable Perfectly Optimized for like a braced weapon handling LMG build, or my Negotiator's Dilemma build. Kinley College is closed, and then of course the Summit you pick your own targeted loot, so let's go check out now what we got on the west side. Alright guys, starting off on the west side with the gear sets starting off first, we got Aces and Eights at Bank HQ, so this is a gear headshot damage set. What you want to do with this is run 3 pieces, not 4, with 2 pieces of Heraldo Holding, one being a backpack with Vigilance or Composure, and the Chain Killer chest piece with Perfect Headhunter on it. And you usually want to run that with the Mantis Exotic MMR and the White Death or Ekim's Long Stick alongside it, and that's going to get you at least 20 million or so headshot damage when you max out everything. Next up, we got Ongoing Directive at DCD HQ. Now this is a great bleed damage build, and what I like to do is run 4 pieces with the Ridge Race Pride chest piece and the Eclipse Protocol backpack for that extra 30% status affected amplified damage towards enemies. And remember that this might be getting fixed in TU12, which drops on December 8th. So in lieu of that, you want to replace that with a backpack with Wicked on it. Alright guys, and then finally we got hardwired at DCD HQ. So what I like to do with this is run an assault turret and striker drone build for usually all of my legendary missions that I like to run. So what I do is mix 3 pieces of hardwired with 2 pieces of Hana U and 1 piece of Wyvernware, and I prefer kinetic momentum over glass cannon, but that's up to you. And then of course the force multiplier backpack with perfect combined arms, rolled with skill haste and skill damage on everything, is probably the best way to run an assault turret and striker drone build, especially for those tough legendary missions. For regular targeted loot, we got Badger Tough at Lincoln Memorial, so if anyone needs that 0F's chest piece with perfect unbreakable, today's basically the perfect day to farm for it. I mean, Lincoln Memorial is a super fast mission to run through. With my Hunter's Fury or True Patriot build, I can shred through this mission in about 8 minutes solo on Heroic, and it's got 3 bosses at the end, and it drops quite a bit of loot for a quick mission like that. Next up, we got Overlord at Constitutional Hall area, so you can farm for the Fox's pair of knee pads with 8% damage to targets that it covers, and that's multiplicative damage, highly worth farming for. And of course, you don't have to run it on a rifle build, even though it does give you the Overlord 10% rifle damage. It still deals enough damage to be worth it on several other DPS builds and not just an M1A or rifle build. Next up, we got Petrov at DCD HQ. Another best in slot item, or used to be best in slot, is Contractor's Gloves with 8% damage to armor, which is great on all LMG builds, or if you stack it with like 2 pieces of Walker Harrison Co. for that extra damage to armor. And then next up, we got Potomac Event Center Gloves targeted loot. Now, while you can farm Contractor's Gloves for, gloves targeted loot, what you want to do is farm for the BTSU gloves whenever you see gloves as targeted loot. And then, of course, farm Petrov for those Contractor's Gloves, like I just said. But the BTSU gloves, I think, are going to be worth it. Really what they do is when you explode your Healing Hive or Stinger Hive, you usually grant overcharge to you and any allies that have skill tier 6. And then it looks like the last one we really got is Federal Emergency Bunker. If you want to farm for the 2 exotic chest pieces, the Tardigrade and the Ridgeway's Pride chest piece, you can here today. But remember that the Ridgeway's Pride is a quest-only item, so you got to get the project first from Summit Floor 100. Otherwise, if you run into someone like me who's already gotten the project and finished it, then you can re-farm for it as chest-targeted loot. And of course, someone could drop it for you as well. I don't know if that completes the project, but of course, when you share something with someone, you can pick it up and use it after that. Last up, we do have Bellstone Armory at Downtown West, so you can farm for the Everyday Carrier with Perfectly Efficient. While I don't ever use this chest piece, I do just want to mention it for anyone that might want to use it. Otherwise, the Liquid Engineer with Perfect Bloodsucker is a DZ exclusive, so it will not drop from an NPC that is outside of the Dark Zone. Alright guys, now let's go check out what we got on the east side. Alright agents, east side targeted loot, starting off with the gear sets. We got Negotiator's Dilemma at District Union Arena. Now this is a great DPS set for ARs, LMGs, and even SMGs as well. What I like to do is mix this with an Eagle Bearer or a double LMG build, like I'll put in the top right card now. 4 pieces of Negotiator's Dilemma, Grupo Sombro gloves, and the Coyote's Mash shreds through content, solo, and even in group it still works, and it's a good crowd control build as well, like Negotiator's Dilemma always is. Next up, we got True Patriot Federal Triangle. I love True Patriot. You mix 4 pieces with that Memento and Sokolo chest piece with Intimidate, and it shreds through content. And probably the best thing about True Patriot is it allows you to soak up enough damage from your shield and your health and armor pool to the point where you can run in 3 and 4 man groups on Heroic with that SMG build, and it still shreds through content, and you rarely die. At least I rarely die on it. Last couple we got is Eclipse Protocol East Mall. Now this is a great place. You got 4 control points back to back to farm for 4 pieces of this with the Imperial Dynasty holster and 1 piece of Golan gear for my recommendation. And that's probably the best fire damage build I've ever put together. It shreds through content solo and in group. It's great status effect build as well. And of course you can mix it with the Vile Mask, and when you do, you can use the Demolitionist spec to increase the debuff damage because that increases the concussion grenades damage, which is where the damage comes from the debuff on the Vile Mask. Lastly, we got Tip of the Spear at American History Museum. I might ignore these from now on unless someone could give me a Tip of the Spear build that's actually worth farming for or using. But otherwise, it just increases your specialization weapon damage, and I don't think it's very useful other than really niche moments in legendary or raid missions where you can just pull out a crossbow or TAC 50 rifle and just, one-hit something or take the armor off a Chunga or something like that. Moving on to regular targeted loot, we got Providence Defense at Southwest. You can farm the Sacrifice with Perfect Glass Cannon, amplifying all damage you do, not just weapon damage by 30%, but all damage you take by 60%. And I personally don't really like Perfect Glass Cannon or Glass Cannon in general. I prefer Intimidate or Obliterate because I don't like to be that squishy, but some people do like it, so more power to you if you enjoy it. Araldo Holdings at Jefferson Plaza. Remember to farm these with weapon damage, weapon handling, and headshot damage. You don't want crit hit chance or crit hit damage because they just don't matter in a headshot damage build. When you're building headshot damage builds, you always want to just go for over 200% headshot damage. Crit hit chance and crit hit damage do not matter. Next up, we got knee pads at Air and Space Museum. You got 2 knee pads you could farm for, the Ninja Bike Messenger knee pads and Sawyer's knee pads. Ninja Bike being for DPS builds, and Sawyer's more for tank or skill builds because you're sitting still more often. Next up, we got Sokolov at Capitol Building Stronghold. Now, Sokolov is a great piece, and you always want chest and backpack pieces with weapon damage, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage. And then, of course, for the chest piece, you're going to want Intimidate, Obliterate, or Glass Cannon. And for the backpack, you want Adrenaline Rush or Vigilance. Last couple we got up here is Rifles at Jefferson Trade Center. Now, you can farm for the Exotic Merciless and the Exotic Diamondback. I personally never use either of those, but for the Merciless, it's all over the place with the rate of fire and recoil, so you want to put on 3 pieces of Striker, the Brace Talent on your chest piece, or just throw weapon handling all over your gear until it feels right. Otherwise, the Diamondback has a short clip. It's pretty good in magazine. It's pretty good in PvP with the short magazine, but it does hit pretty hard. Otherwise, I just rarely ever use it over an M1A. And then, of course, you got the Surge with Perfect Spike and the Baker's Dozen with Perfect Lucky Shot if you want to farm for those 2 named rifles. I think they're pretty well worth it. And then lastly, the best rifle damage talents is Boomerang, Rifleman, and Ranger. I never go on an M1A or rifle without one of those if it's a damage build. So that's highly worth farming for sure. Last but not least, we got Grupo Sombra at Grand Washington Hotel. So remember, 1 piece for DPS builds for 15% crit hit damage, and 2 pieces for explosive skill damage builds. And yeah, that's about it. Let's go check out now what we got in New York City. Alright, agents, last but not least, we got New York City Target Loot highlights. Starting off with the gear sets, we got Hunter's Fury at the Tombs. So remember, this is an SMG and shotgun damage build, and I'll put my favorite one in the top right card now. That's going to be 4 pieces of Hunter's Fury, with the Memento backpack and Death Grip gloves for that extra 10% armor on kill. It just shreds through content. Not as much as True Patriot when you compare it in group, but solo content for sure. Next up, we got Foundry Bulwark at Pathway Park. I never really use this. Keep in mind the chest and backpack piece for Future Initiative and Foundry Bulwark are raid exclusive to the Iron Horse raid, so keep that in mind. But for Foundry Bulwark, I just rarely use it. It's mostly a tank build to soak up absurd amounts of damage, and of course, you always want to run the Bulwark shield with it. And then lastly, we got Future Initiative at Wall Street. Now, Future Initiative is a great healer set, and what you want to do is run the chest and backpack piece if you have them. If you don't, get an Alp Summit chest piece and backpack with Empathetic Resolve on the chest piece and Safeguard on the backpack for a really, really good healer build. Otherwise, for normal targeted loot, we do have SMGs and Financial District, so just like the thumbnail says, Lady Death, today is a great day to farm for it. Otherwise, there is the Backfire and the Chatterbox, and if you don't have the Chatterbox yet, which is a quest-only exotic, I will put the guide. It's about 5 minutes long on how to get it in the top right card now. Now remember, the Lady Death has about a 3% chance to drop from open world NYC bosses, which there'll be a map in the video description below to show you exactly where these open NYC world bosses are. And on heroic content, it's 7% chance to drop and 5% chance on challenging. So if you take that 7% chance on heroic and mix it with 3% chance from the open world NYC bosses, you got roughly about 10% chance of getting it to drop on heroic open world. Remember though that the Dark Winter and the Apartment are Dark Zone exclusives, so do not farm for them outside of the Dark Zone. Otherwise, there is a couple of named SMGs that are worth it to farm for outside of the Dark Zone, and that would be Safety Distance with Perfect Outsider and the Grudge. Next up, we got Walker Harris & Co. at Liberty Island, so you could farm for the Chainkiller chest piece with Perfect Headhunter for your headshot damage build. And remember to always roll this with weapon damage, weapon handling, and headshot damage. Remember, crit hit chance and crit hit damage do not matter on a headshot damage piece or build. And really, that's about it. I will mention Marksman Rifles and Battery Park as the last piece that you can farm for. You can, of course, get the Mantis and the Nemesis, but remember that the Nemesis is a quest-only exotic, and you do have to get Puck's blueprint from the Grand Washington Hotel invaded mission when it's invaded that week. Otherwise, the Mantis is really top tier. You run it with a decoy on a headshot damage build, and it usually gets me over 20 million per headshot. Otherwise, there's a couple of named MMRs that are worth farming for, the White Death and Ekim's Longstick with Perfect Ranger. Otherwise, that's about it for MMRs and New York City targeted loot. Alright agents, well that was the targeted loot for today. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed my content. If you would like to become a member for support and exclusive perks, you can click the join button below. I really appreciate it, and for everyone that has been a member for so long, thank you guys so much. You can also grab some Shadow Gaming merch in the link in the pinned comment and video description below. I don't have any promo codes out right now, but thank you to everyone that purchased something with the promo code. You can support me on Alt Tech. I always upload my videos to BitChute, Patreon, all that good stuff. There's always links everywhere in the video description and pinned comment. But otherwise, like I always say, if you guys are still watching this to the end, thank you so much. I work very hard on my content every morning, and I appreciate everyone that watches this in full. Take care, agents, and be sure to stay tuned for more daily Division 2 content. This is Agent Shadow signing off. I will see you in the next video. Take care, agents.